Welcome to your podcast, Leadership is Tricky, where we'll tackle various topics, challenges, and experiences as it relates to your investment in leadership. So, let's design success together. Now your hosts.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Leadership is Tricky. It's Erick Ocasio here, and we are back. And I have a great guest, someone that I met earlier this year, and we hit it off, and we've been trying to get this going. So, Marika, how are you?
I'm very good. So good to see you, Eric, again.
Yeah, likewise. I know that you've been extremely busy, and I've been busy, and I'm just glad that we were able to connect, although virtually, and get this captured because I was really intrigued by your story when we first discussed it, and I really wanted to capture it for all those young professionals in our audience that's following Leadership is Tricky. So, one, how do you say your last name? So I don't want to butcher it.
It depends on the country. Auramo. If I'm in Italy, they say Auramo. If I'm in Finland, it's Auramo. In the US, it was Aramo. So whatever.
Right. And then
I'm
maybe
very flexible.
for the Spanish, they might roll the R, Remo.
Oh yeah, exactly.
No, cool. So, Marika, what's your current role today?
First of all, Eric, thank you very much for having me. So I'm a global CEO of Vodafone business. So my business unit, we are serving all the businesses from a very small, but usually family-owned businesses up to very large global companies, and of course also public sector.
Cool. So you have your scope is extremely large, right? So we're gonna back it all the way up to young Marika, and you are from Finland. Um,
Yes.
so let's talk about your upbringing. So tell me about growing up in Finland and young Marika.
Yeah, actually, yes, I'm from Finland, and I was the second, or actually, I would say that I was the third child because I have a brother and he's 8 years older than I am. But before I was born, unfortunately, my parents lost one son
Oh,
and then they got me. So actually, maybe I didn't realize when I was a child, but later on when I reflected, and sometimes I also reflected with my parents, but also with my brother, that clearly. Unfortunately, that sad incident really impacted their lives, and maybe also an attitude on how they raised me. I was also very happy that even if I came from a rather humble background, so I didn't grow up with money at all, but I
mm,
was very happy. And so I would say that I didn't grow up with money, but I grew up with love. So I was very much supported by my family and extended family. At that time, of course, we were not spending any time on the social media or on any of the platforms. What we did, we visited friends, we visited relatives. My grandmom, who is actually who was my idol, she came from a family of 9 siblings. So
wow.
you may understand that, of course, when I was a little girl, I visited all of these aunts and uncles, and I was blessed. Now I actually started to realize and appreciate the time what I and this family connection that we had at the time when I was a child.
And what's interesting is I like how you really hit on that, right? Because I think I'm the last kind of generation where we didn't have the internet,
Yes.
for a large part of my life. And then, when I was 20 or so, that's really when we latched on to the internet and social media. But yeah, the time before then was glorious when you really look back at going
Yes.
outside and interacting with friends and making up games and being with
Playing
cousins
game.
and
Exactly.
learning from aunts and uncles,
Yeah.
face to
Yes.
face rather than FaceTime, right?
And well, I don't know, also another one that I noticed only later on that, yes, I have a brother who is 8 years older, but I had a lot of cousins. All of them were boys, and I was the only girl. And
Okay.
I wanted to be part of the games. I wanted to be, part of even of the fights. So it learned also some lessons. They didn't treat me differently because I was a girl, so I needed to fight back in a positive way.
Right. It makes you stronger. So I had an older sister that used to beat me up all the time. That made me stronger. So no, that's always good when you're around family. So early on though, like who were your inspirational figures that you said, you know what, I really want to follow, this path, or, who wasn't, that made you kind of make some decisions, early on in your life?
I didn't maybe notice when I was a kid, even not at that time when I was a teenager, but later on I actually noticed that there was one person who really influenced and impacted my life, and it was my grandmother, my father's mother. And she was a kind of living, I would say, that embodiment of kind but firm. She taught me that she was not a leader, so she was not an executive in a big company or whatever, because as mentioned, she also came from a very humble background. But she taught me that effective, even leadership, isn't about being a friend or dictator. It's about the clear, or setting the very clear and high standards while treating people with deep respect and compassion. So she had such a great values. And I spent a lot of time with her. I was also traveling. She came from Sweden, so from the kind of Swedish background, I spent a lot of time with her, traveling in Finland and in Sweden, sometimes maybe even in Norway. I learned so much from this great lady. She showed me that you can hold a line without losing your humanity, and that people are more willing to follow a person whose firmness is rooted in caring, not control. She never controlled me, despite the fact that, of course, she needed to put some, guardrails and discipline. But it was always with such a, love, and she was so caring. So I'm pretty sure that I learned so many things, and some of my values come from my grandmother.
Well, one, thanks for sharing. That's actually
Mm.
beautiful. And I would almost say, she probably was like an executive, in your family unit being so
Yeah,
large, right?
yeah,
Keeping everyone in track. And you growing up with a bunch of boys and fighting all
yeah,
the time, she probably
yeah.
had to, wrap her arms around you and get you in the right place, right? So,
And
thank you.
another thing that she kept on actually saying is that you always need to treat everybody with a high integrity. That actually goes to my father and many of us, because of course she was actually also helping other team members and family members to become hopefully good human beings.
Mhm.
So you must see. She kept on saying that you must see this inherent value in every person, regardless of their titles or backgrounds. So that was also another learning that I actually got from her.
She sounds like an amazing woman. So,
Mm.
awesome.
And she
Um,
had a great sense of humor as well.
oh yeah.
Yes.
Um, so so let's talk about early in your career, right? So you started off telling us you're the CEO of this large company, right? So let's step through, post graduating from college, right? Because you graduated from the International Marketing of Espo Business College, right? I think I said that right, Espo. There's a lot of O's on the end. Um, and you have an MBA from Henley Business School. So you took that into your initial career in some small startups.
Mm.
So let's talk about, your first kind of introduction to this first startup that you went into, and what were some of the leadership challenges early?
Yeah. First of all, also when I have reflected, I have noticed that I have been very blessed, because I have had so many good mentors. Usually also they were leaders, or in this case, they were the owners of the company. And as you mentioned, I spent 9 years working for two startup companies. I was maybe an employee number 4 or something like that when
Wow,
I
yeah.
joined the first, startup, and help, the company to grow. But I keep on saying that there were so many great learnings, and I'm so grateful for those years. Why? Because when you're working for startup companies, first of all, you need to be very customer centric. You're so dependent on the cash flow that you are getting from your few customers. You don't really have also any brand reputation. When you're calling customers or visiting them, they usually don't even recognize your company name. So you need to be strong enough to be humble. But at the very same time, work hard and show the value that you can bring to these persons and companies. More importantly, I also felt that maybe, as mentioned, this customer centricity, I hope that I have been able to keep it, because finally I also keep on telling everyone that it's finally a customer who's paying a salary, and we need to be obsessed with the customer success. And when you are working in a startup company, you are actually very obsessed with the customer success and value that you are bringing through your solutions that may not even be so mature. But also in a startup company, you don't have all these processes and resources and funding available. You need to be very selective where you are investing your time in, or where you are investing usually your very limited, investment budgets. Mm-hmm. And then more importantly, when you are working in such an environment, you are very flexible. One day you are, working in marketing, then you are helping somebody in consulting, then you are, you need to also know the solutions. You are in pre-sales and you are in sales and whatever. And this flexibility should be also something, and agility, that we all need to have. And when you are working for very large companies, I have seen that there's always a risk that people start working in their own silos. And that's why I hope that I have been also in a larger organization, been able to respect the fact that, yes, there is a certain expertise that you can find in different departments, but finally build bridges instead of, and try to break these silos, because usually then you are much stronger in front of your customers and vendors.
Yeah, what I really heard too is that, having multiple hats early on for that time frame. I mean, you're wearing multiple hats, so you're getting that experience and you get to learn. And when you're in a startup, like you said, the customer's paying your salary. So if you're not getting business, if you're not focused on the customer, you're going to go hungry, right? Yes. That's what it comes down to, right? It's feast or famine.
You won't exist after a few
years. Say that again?
You won't even exist unless you are not really focusing on the things that matter.
Right. So, I mean, even for folks out there that are listening, that's one of the things that I talk about all the time, even in my field, is I tell people, take on the hard problems, take on as many hard problems and experiences that you can, because that's how you grow and you learn. And then ultimately, you can take that into a bigger role when you have it, because you can reflect and appreciate that. So, yeah, that's really what I heard, and I thought that was pretty cool, because in the way that you pitched it too, because yeah, one day you're in marketing, the next day you might be HR.
Yeah, exactly. And
right.
We actually all are working also for HR if you are working with your people.
Yeah. So, because we're the ones pushing policy, keeping in policy, informing policy, right? And what's working, what's not. How do we take care of our employees ourselves, right? So, that's great. So, so what were your aspirations though early on? Because I did a small Gemini search using AI on you, on what was.
Interested in hearing what AI was saying about
it. Yeah, because AI kind of distilled your early aspirations, and I could read it if you'd like, but it says that initially you dreamed of becoming a lawyer or a businesswoman, and it put it in quotes, but by chance began a field of study in software engineering. So I really want to get what's the truth. Is this AI?
It's not true. So no, I think that they need to, change the, I don't know, algorithm or whatever. Actually, my dream when I was still in high school, and this is also the reason why I actually applied to a kind of special high school, and they were specialized in journalism. So I thought that I'm such a good writer. And I was actually a good writer when I was still in the middle school. Why? Because then you are surrounded by normal, students. Mm-hmm. Then I don't know why, but maybe my grades were quite good. So I was accepted. And then I was surrounded by these excellent, writers, usually sons or daughters of some other, authors or writers. And I know that maybe I'm below even an average. And at the very same time, maybe it was I didn't really seek for getting into an IT industry. It was a little bit accident, because at that time when I graduated and then I finally got a few job opportunities, and one happened to be this software company who hired me, and ever since I have been on this journey, despite the fact that now I'm working for a very global telecommunication company. But sometimes you are not planning your career. You are actually just taking some steps, and then you follow a path that you may actually not know at that time when you take the path. But then if you feel that, hey, this path is taking me to the right direction and I love it, and I actually learn more while I'm actually walking on this path, then here we are.
Right. Not so I know when I first started my career, I really wanted to be a teacher. That's really what I wanted to do, right? Was to teach.
You would
And
have been
then
an excellent teacher, Eric.
I think so too. However, my mother, who was a principal and she was an educator, she was a teacher for first, second graders, and then at some point she was a principal. Um, I found that she was like, there's no real money in teaching, right? So, and you put out more as a teacher than you probably, I don't know, I wouldn't say receive. It depends on how you put it. But I fell into IT, right? That's what I went into the Army for, and I fell into it. But to your point, we kind of set off on this what do we want to be, and then sometimes the path finds us, right, and draws us in, and we are where we are. All right, so you lead these startups. What's next for you after that? How
Yeah,
did
I joined a global software company called SAP,
right?
a German software company. And as you know, I have a high respect for all the big American technology companies, including hyperscalers and software companies. But there are a few European software companies as well, and maybe the biggest one is SAP. And I spent 24 years in SAP. So, and I remember then when, I was interviewed and I went through the kind of selection process. They asked that, how many years I'm committed to stay. And I told them maybe 6 years. I
Wow.
don't know what happened. And maybe what kept me so long in SAP, first of all, you are working, of course, with very interesting companies. You are helping them to also move the needle when it comes to internal processes on how they do business with their customers, how do they run their HR processes. But more importantly, I was so lucky that I managed to take so many different roles. I was also staying in many, many different countries. I was even located in the US for 3 years, and I was part of the local organizations, regional organizations, global, business units. So that's maybe that is also something that's driving me. I love to jump into a cold water, and I love when I'm getting a new opportunity. And very often I was asked to actually join another team, and I was asked to drive a change. And very often when you are jumping the cold water, you may know that you can swim, but you don't know, how well you swim because the water is so cold. And as mentioned, I needed to jump into cold water very often in SAP.
No, I mean I think that's important too. Is I think I'm starting to see a trend here with shared different experiences, different hats, different roles, and really learning along the way. And I know you said cold water. One of the things I always talk about is change, and that's change within an organization or with people is like putting yourself in this heightened level of chaos or disequilibrium, so you just don't know about something. And some people tend to fight, flee, or freeze in that space if they're too long. But really, the thing is to raise your status quo. If you sit in a role forever, and hey, I'm the person at the checkout counter, and I'm pushing the groceries down the belt. If I sit there for 20 years, I'm really not going to learn much other than this, right?
And some people actually like it, and it's good. There might be the best, I don't know, controller who wants to work on that space, and that's fine. But it's not me. And then in addition, I felt that, it also forced me to sometimes accelerate my own development, because you are actually moving to another area. I remember that when I had been a long time in software kind of unit, and then I was asked to start leading consulting, business. I thought that, then I need to know utilization, how to mitigate the risks, simulate the pension, that impact on the bottom line or whatever. But I learned so much because that was something that I hadn't done earlier, or in a very small scale in a startup. And then when I moved and started as a COO for the biggest line of business at that time in the US, once again, I didn't know anyone in the organization in the US when I joined. And I learned so much. Even I learned something about the American working culture. And it was great because once again, I got some hopefully new assets that I can even now or use in my current position.
So let's stay there for a second, right? So you move from this European centric like environment and you move to the United States and you look at like the different cultures. Because I talked about this maybe a few weeks ago, in fact, where when I go visit, places like Poland or Spain or Greece or Estonia, there's different cultures, right, within the way people actually conduct business. And it always starts with how you greet someone, right? So or what do you do when you first come to a meeting, right? And in the European culture, I find it's, a little cookie or some coffee and conversation about you and life. Whereas in the US, it's, hey, the cookies are in the corner. Let's get the business. And so can you talk about just a little bit of, if you'd like, about the differences between European culture and what you found when you went to the US, and then from a leadership perspective, are there any differences?
First of all, Eric, I need to say that there is not such a thing that European culture, because as you know, we have so many multiple countries, and very often each country, they have their unique own culture. Coming from the Nordic, Nordics, even inside of the Nordics, what you find in Sweden and what is the culture, it's slightly different what we have in Finland or in Norway, in Denmark. Then you go to France, and culture and some of the habits and how you behave and how you run the business, it's different in France. What is it, for instance, I'm sitting now here in Germany, what is it here in Germany? But maybe, of course, I knew because I was working in the global environment earlier, so I knew, something about the American culture, but I also acknowledge that I need to also change. Coming from Finland, and many Finnish people, we are focusing on showing the results, delivering the results. As mentioned, we want to be strong enough to be humble. We are not the ones who are talking all the time, because we think always that the results speak on behalf of themselves or myself. So I don't need to speak up. And I noticed that, I remember that after 2 months, I had my first proper one-to-one with my American boss, and he was saying that, do you have any opinions? And I was asking him, yes, haven't you seen the point of views that I have created? Yeah, but you are so silent. We have all these calls. So I noticed that even sometimes I didn't really have anything important to say, but I knew that I need to actually speak up, and I need to tell that, hey, I'm also here, and this is my opinion. Another thing that I actually learned, especially from him, I needed to be much better at summarizing the key points, because you don't have a day to discuss the topic. I lost him after 5 minutes if I didn't summarize what is a problem statement, what are the 2 scenarios that we consider, and these some pros and cons, because it's much faster organization. And also, what I also appreciated is that we very often Americans are much better at making faster decisions, and then also reverts these decisions should you actually see that this is not working out. Unlike here in Europe, very often actually the processes are taking much longer. Maybe something that I brought with me to the team was that, yes, sometimes I felt that we were about to make very, very big decisions and important decisions without really collecting information, analyzing, and validating the information that we got from the reports or by interviewing some of the people, and then drawing conclusions and scenarios, and also analyzing what are the pros and cons depending on the scenario. Still, we were very fast in decision making, but maybe sometimes we made more or better decision based on the facts instead of just running.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting because it's a delicate balance, right? Is you want to make fast decisions, you do want to do the analytical work, right, to make the best informed decision.
Yes.
But I give it to your American boss, to be nameless at this time, but is he told you to use your voice, right? Look, you're here, give your opinion, use your voice. You're at the table,
Yes,
right? We
yes,
want to hear from you,
yes,
right? And
yes.
that's awesome. Good for
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
And good for you for taking the feedback and jumping in there. Um,
Yes, exactly. And as mentioned, I really, appreciated the time in the US.
so 24 years at SAP when you said you were going to be there for 6. So,
Yes.
right. So if you could wrap it all up, your time there as you move into the Vodafone piece, like what did you take, what leaderships, traits, skills, competencies did you take from those 24 years that now you're using in your new role?
Yeah. First of all, the topic that we already discussed, the kind of cultural awareness, because SAP is a global company. And when I had my global role, I worked with our Indian friends, with our APJ friends, with China, with Latin America, with Europe. So even if global companies, they may say that you have a certain corporate culture, but as we discussed earlier, you need to acknowledge and be aware of the cultural differences, and you slightly need to adapt your style, your communication approach, dependent on the environment and dependent on the culture that you are in. So this is one. Then also, I would say that it's also about the maybe a kind of combination of my 9 years in the startup, but also in SAP. SAP is also a very customer-centric organization. It's a very sales-oriented organization, but also how do you actually implement this kind of mindset that we are here for our customers, regardless of the units. Also in Vodafone, of course, we need to have a resilient networks. You have your customer operations, you have many teams, but when I'm discussing with them, I always want to bring this customer centricity in the conversations, and maybe that also started in the startup in these two startup companies, but also in SAP. And overall, when it comes to leadership, I think it's getting back to people.
Right.
More you work with different people, more you learn. And by the way, I really truly believe that leadership is really to be on a journey, and it's a continuous journey. And I keep on learning, and I keep on making a lot of mistakes, but it's a journey, and you need to be interested in people and on how you support people to grow and accelerate their own developments. Then I'm happy when I see that somebody is really accelerating his or her own development and achieving his or her goals.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why, leadership is tricky, right?
Yeah.
Um, because I mean, it really is a series of mistakes along the way, and that's how we learn, right? And that's how people learn to be who they are and figure out who they are. And we gotta embrace that, embrace the mistakes, embrace the feedback, do the reflection, do the work, because really leadership is an activity. And you
By the
know,
way, I see the poster of Michael Jordan, and when I was in the US, I started to love. I'm actually a sport fan.
mhm.
Almost any sport. I watch tennis, soccer, so football, American football. I fell in love with American football. Of course, I was based in Philadelphia, so Philadelphia Eagles. Sorry if there are some other fans,
Mhm.
but I went to quite a many NBA games, and there is a great quote, and it also goes very well to the leadership by Michael Jordan. He once said that talent wins games, but it's intelligence and teamwork that win championships. And I think it's a great quote. Yes, you need to have talented people, but when you bring the intelligent together and really work as one team, you can move the mountains.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And so, some of your principles, that I did my own research on, and these are your words, though. One was driving simplicity, which we kind of talked through here. Ensuring customer success was number two. And then developing amazing talent and working through great people, right? Which is everything you just encapsulated. One of the things I did want to just pull the string on before we run out of time is, driving simplicity. What do you mean by that?
I mean that I would say that when you are working in a startup company, you don't really have complexity because
Right.
it's so small, and maybe you have other issues at that time when you start growing, because then you need to start establishing certain policies, processes. You need to have more tools in order to support you to implement some of these processes. But for me, simplicity means that you also need to be better at making decisions on things that you need to stop doing. Especially in lots of organizations, there is a tendency that we just add things, and suddenly you are becoming more complex.
Right.
And also empowering people. And how do you do it is by having also simplicity in the organizational. You need to be clear what are the roles and responsibilities. But simplicity is helping you to be faster. I also believe that it can help you to be more customer-centric. And then finally, you can actually be much, of course, more efficient and productivity, but simplicity is not the same than, reducing costs. But it's to actually remove some of these organizational barriers that many companies may have in their organizations.
Thank you for that. So, all right. So now you're in your role. You've been in your role for, I would say, a little over a year now.
16 months, I suppose, or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So, what's the couple takeaways? What are some of the leadership challenges that you've had? Maybe one or two, and then what are your key takeaways? And then we'll close up with what I ask every guest.
Yeah. As I mentioned, I hope that I'm strong enough to also accept that I'm still on this journey. I joined a new industry. Yes, in my business unit, we are very much developing and focusing on building digital services, cloud services, cybersecurity services, and many other solutions that are quite familiar to me. But then the whole connectivity environment and networks, it was a kind of new area for me. So I have a lot of things that I need to learn. So when we were talking about the development, yes, I still need to develop my skills and competencies, especially in telecommunication industry, and also to start knowing on how Vodafone is operating. I'm pretty sure that I have learned on how to navigate internally, but then also, as I mentioned, we are also together with my team and with the wider teams. We are also, of course, transforming on how we are working with our customers, how we are making sure that we have this unique, easy to use solutions for customers, but also how do we serve our customers, not only by having one-to-one connections, but through the digital channels. We are also working on AI. We need to implement AI into our processes in order to have simplicity, right? And further automate our processes. But how do we also actually create certain AI-driven solutions that are bringing value to our customers? And as I mentioned, also leadership. It's really to be on this journey. Am I ready? I think that I'm never ready. But I keep on doing my utmost in order to serve my people and our customers.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, because one thing for sure is that I don't feel as though I'm being a good leader if I don't walk away feeling like I failed 3, 4 times a day.
Yes,
So that way I can go
that's all
back.
right.
I go back home and I reflect or I ask questions. I'll even go back to my people and tell them, hey, I think I failed you in this instance. How could I be better for you? Right. And
And it requires, actually, my hats off, it requires also courage to
absolutely.
accept it, and tell your people that, sorry, I made a mistake.
Hmm. But nice thing about IT is we can always fix it. Sometimes you can't always fix the relationships, but
Yeah.
when it comes to IT, we can always fix it. But all right, so to close out, I ask all my employees, right? So we've navigated from young Marika to Marika where we're at today. If you can encapsulate this, your entire journey to this date, what would be the one nugget you would leave my audience with that you've learned, or words of wisdom, or a quote, or just something that you want to leave them with when it comes to leadership?
Maybe a few, and maybe those are my leadership principles. Maybe they are not, and I hope that they are also applicable and relevant for everyone. First of all, sure, do not seek power. You shouldn't be driven by power or title, but when you serve, I'm pretty sure that you are actually a better leader. Another one is humility over ego.
Mhm.
Sometimes you see leaders who have such a big ego that sometimes they maybe forget this high integrity
Mhm.
and this approach that you are working for your team. So it's not about you anymore; it's about us. So
Right.
your team, and then listen. As a good leader, you need to listen very carefully. You need to speak less, but you need to listen, learn, and as we discussed, also sometimes admit if you were wrong.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so with that, we're going to close out. And I would almost maybe throw in being kind and compassionate like your grandmother, um, right? Because that served you well over the years. But one, thank you, Marika, for joining us today, and sharing time with the audience and your leadership journey, and allowing me to capture that in real time. For those out there that are first time listeners, thank you for tuning into Leadership is Tricky. And for the return listeners, thank you for your viewership, your audienceship, and just riding the wave with us, because we've done very well this season. So this will close out season 5. We just went over 220,000 clicks and views for this season. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in and continuing to tune in. And season 6 will be coming soon, probably early in calendar year 2026. So with that, thank you again, Marika, for joining us, and
And thank you for having me.
I wish you a good day.